the senior director, the senior fellow at the Foundation for Defense of Democracies. Great to see you, Behnam. And also joining us today, pleased to have the former Israeli Defense Forces paratrooper Daniel Flesch. He's the National Security Senior Policy Analyst over at the Heritage Foundation. Gentlemen, here we are. So day two, dust settling a little bit, but not really. We have these reports of public execution in Gaza by Hamas. There's also concern from the hostages' families who are saying, where are the bodies? And President Trump did note this and saying it's going to be difficult. We will make it happen. But there's some fears. Daniel, I'll let you start with those two troubling reports today. And how troubling are they to you?
Well, thank you for having me on. And I'd say, the first phase with the hostage release, and mind you, the cost, the price of that release was A, Israel withdrawing to a predetermined line to control about 53% of the territory in Gaza, and B, significantly releasing nearly 2,000 Palestinian prisoners and terrorists, many of whom were engaged in operations against Israel since October 7th, but a few hundred of which were serving multiple life sentences from terrorist acts going back to the 90s. So that was the cost of getting those 20 hostages back, but obviously Israel's willing to pay that cost. But now going forward, Hamas has said they're not going to disarm, and they're also going to be a part of the governing structure going forward. And there's no organizing body that can actually extricate their arms from them short of the IDF, or maybe you have a couple international actors in the Middle East who are able to impose enough pressure on Hamas, but that's unlikely. So moving forward, it's unclear exactly how to implement the remaining 20 parts of the 20-point plan going to phase two, because Hamas has already said we're not going to disarm. And as you mentioned, we're already seeing Hamas exact revenge on other clans and groups within Gaza for supposedly, as they're saying it, collaborating with Israel. So it's already going to be a bit of a mini civil war, a fight for prominence in the Gaza Strip, and there's really no organization that can ensure that Hamas does not have a role going forward short of the IDF.
All right, it's a lot to take in, but I mean, obviously the key was getting those hostages out, phase one. That is accomplished. And there is an apology coming from Christina Amanpour at CNN. I want to play what she said about the hostages who we know were coming out skeletal. I mean, in these abhorrent conditions. And now she was forced to apologize. And some say she really didn't even want to. Here's both clips. We'll play them, and Behnam, get your response after.
It's been a terrible, terrible 2 years for them, because not only are they there, they're probably being treated better than the average Gazan because they are the pawns and the chips that Hamas had. That was insensitive and it was wrong. From speaking to many former hostages and their families, like everyone, I've been horrified at what Hamas has subjected them to over 2 long years. They've told me, as you've just heard, their stories of barely being able to breathe in the tunnels, not being allowed to cry, being starved and made to dig their own graves. And of course, today, some of the hostages are coming back in body bags.
I don't know. I can't get into her brain to say if it was heartfelt, but I think it's important to get your reaction to that, because as Daniel was saying, there is going to be a lot of reporting of what's happening in Gaza on the ground. And if you leave it up to CNN, how it may be twisted in some of the legacy media, it's a concern, Behnam.
Well, great to be with you, Bianca. This is really the million-dollar question, because the mainstream media has gotten so wrong when it comes to Israel and Gaza and Hamas over the past 2 years. Naturally, I can't speak for that host or any mainstream media host, but I will tell you this, that when you see the different images, the images of the Hamas terrorists coming home versus the hostages that were held by Hamas coming home to Israel, you have two fundamentally different societies, two side-by-sides really clashing, and there's no room for gray space or a middle. You're either on the side of civilization or you're either on the side of barbarism. So I commend the CNN host for picking the right side. Hopefully it's not too little, too late. But nonetheless, there should be no kind of projection onto Hamas, a terrorist group that terrorizes its own population. What would you think they would do to an enemy population, particularly an enemy population that they routinely demonize because of their perverse ideology?
Yeah, and it's hard even for some on the left to say the word Trump as we played. And one of the hostages, though, in a brave interview is saying Hamas was afraid that President Trump was going to get in and get them out, that they wanted Kamala. So we're going to hear a lot of reporting, a lot going on the ground there. Behnam, Daniel, thank you so much for your analysis today, and I hope you come back and join us here on Newsline, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Thank you.